Hey YouTube, what's going on? Snowflocky's Emos here today with another deck profile. This is an update to my Ancient Gear Trap Control deck profile. This is a profile I did a little while back, but was busting this deck out and playing around with it, so figured I'd give an updated deck profile on it. It's a deck in which we use some powerful Ancient Gear cards, namely big old Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon here, with the very powerful trap card Ancient Gear Reborn, and a lot of other powerful trap cards that slow our opponent down and just constantly resummon an Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon on a slowed down game state that allows us to beat down for game. So it's pretty cool. Allows me to use this really cool looking monster. I really like the design of Reactor Dragon and some of the Ancient Gears. And, you know, it's just a fun way to take a couple of the cards I had and play a deck built around it. So with that said, let's get into the cards. Starting with our monsters, I am playing 2 copies of Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon. This is our big boss monster of the deck. Reactor Dragon has 3,000 attack and is a 9-star Ancient Gear monster. It's pretty sweet. It does have an effect that if we tribute summon this card by tributing an Ancient Gear monster, which we do have the possibility to do, we can attack defense position monsters and do piercing damage to our opponent. But other than that, what's really cool about this card is when this card attacks during the battle phase, your opponent can activate any spells, traps, or monster effects until the end of the damage step. So that's pretty cool. Lets your attacks get in uninterrupted, of course. And at the end of the damage step, if this card attacked, you can destroy a spell or trap on the field. That can be your spell or trap, which we can use, or it could be an opponent's spell or trap. So pretty good. We are playing skill drain in this deck, so sometimes these effects aren't live, but if effects are still live, those are pretty useful effects to have. Our main goal is to get this guy into the grave and to be special summoning him out each and every turn that he's not on the board with Ancient Gear Reborn. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Ancient Gear Wyvern. This is our main searcher of the deck, of course. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add an Ancient Gear card from the deck to your hand, except Ancient Gear Wyvern, but also you cannot set cards for the rest of this turn. That is important to note. This is a trap card based deck, so if you're adding Ancient Gear Reborn, which is normally what we're looking for with this card, just know we're not going to be able to set it on the same turn. Now we can set cards before this effect activates, so if you have other traps, and you certainly will in this deck, we want to set those. Then, of course, if this card attacks, your opponent can't activate monster effects till the end of the damage step. Pretty cool. And last for monsters, I'm playing 3 copies of Ancient Gear Knight. Ancient Gear Knight is a Gemini monster, which means when it's in your hand or when it's in the graveyard or on the field, it's treated as a normal monster, and then you can spend another normal summon to Gemini summon it. Ancient Gear Knight mostly isn't here because it's 4 stars, making it normal summonable, and is 1800 attack, which is the highest attack on a 4-star normal summonable Ancient Gear. So we just play him to get extra bodies on board in case we haven't got to our Ancient Gear Reactor yet. If you do Gemini summon him, he just gains the regular Ancient Gear effect where when he attacks, your opponent can't activate spells or traps. So not a big deal, just another guy that we want to have in here for additional bodies and attack power on board. And that is it for the monsters. Next up, going into our spells, I am playing 3 copies of Gear Town. Gear Town is the old Ancient Gear field spell. Both players can normal summon Ancient Gear monsters for 1 less tribute, and when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So that's pretty nice. This means any Reactor Dragons that are stuck in our hand are going to be able to be summoned easier by tributing only 1 monster instead of 2, and it will always be easy to have 1 monster out on the field thanks to our Ancient Gear Reborn. So that's very nice, and of course the second effect is the big winner here. When this card's destroyed and sent by the graveyard, doesn't matter who it is, so if we pop it with Reactor Dragon's effect, or our opponent pops it, we can special summon an Ancient Gear from our hand, deck, or graveyard. That can get us Reactor Dragon out if we've been looking for him, summon a Wyvern if we want to search for a card. Just pretty good stuff there. We're playing 3 of it because it's not really searchable, and I want to pop some and have some to keep online. Just a card I want to see. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Ancient Gear Catapult. Ancient Gear Catapult says, while you control no monsters, you can target a face-up card you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. So this is nice. This is mainly used to pop our Gear Town that we have on the field. We can play Gear Town, use Ancient Gear Catapult to target it and destroy it. That will allow us to then special summon an Ancient Gear from the deck with this card, and then Gear Town will activate on the next chain and special summon another Ancient Gear monster from our deck. So it just gets a lot of them out of our deck, gets us to Reactor Dragon. Just a very cool play, and that's mostly what we're using Ancient Gear Catapult for. Next, I'm playing one copy of Supply Squad. Supply Squad is a card that is kind of interesting here as a one of. This deck has a lot of cards that we're using to destroy our own cards, such as Torrential Tribute and things like that. And we're also going to, recklessly use our monsters so that if they get destroyed, it's nice to have just a little extra draw power to replace that card, especially since the monster is coming back. Supply Squad just says once per turn, if a monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can draw one card. Too many of this card is cloggy, but having one of in a free slot, I'm still finding pretty handy, so definitely enjoying that. Next up, I'm playing one copy of Fury of Karyushin. We're playing 3 Torrential Tribute in this deck, and this is a spell card that says just add Torrential Tribute from the deck to your hand. Torrential Tribute is a great card, very integral to the strategy, so having a searcher for it, especially when we have 3, is just good. Thins the deck, very much like that. Next up, I'm playing 3 Pot of Extravagance. This is not your standard Ancient Gear Fusion OTK build. We're using trap cards and Ancient Gear Reborn to just summon the main deck monsters over and over again while we play floodgates to slow down our opponent. So we don't need our extra deck. We're going to turn it into draw power. We're going to banish 6 of those extra deck cards to draw 2 cards. Now we can't use any other draw effects a turn, which may, not work with Supply Squad, but that's all right. We're mostly using Supply Squad for when we destroy stuff on our opponent's turn. Next up, I'm playing 3 Pots of Duality. Lots of turns where we don't need to special summon on our own turn, especially our opening turn. And using Pot of Duality to look for a key floodgate that's going to win us the game is very important. Pot of Duality just looks at the top 3 cards of our deck, adds 1 to our hand, and shuffles the rest back in. In exchange, we can't special summon that turn, which is no big deal. And last for the spells, I'm playing 1 card of Demise. Very low monster, trap heavy deck. Card of Demise is a good reload card or a good way to get more cards into our hand. We draw until we have 3 cards in our hand. Also for the rest of this turn, our opponent takes no damage. And of course, during the end phase of this turn, you have to send every card in your hand to the graveyard. But that's all right. We have most of the spells and traps, so we're just going to be setting them anyway. And we can't special summon the turn we activate this card. So not a big deal. Like I said, we don't always have to special summon on our turn. Lots of turns we won't be. So, having Card of Demise to reload on trap cards is very good. And that's it for the spells. Next, going into our trap cards, I am playing 3 copies of Ancient Gear Reborn. I love this card. Ancient Gear Reborn is a really cool continuous trap card that just says once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can target an Ancient Gear monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and if you do, it gains 200 attack, even if this card leaves the field. You can only control 1 Ancient Gear Reborn. So this card is pretty awesome. I wish more archetypes had a card like this that just was a every turn Call of the Haunted for, your archetype. But this one's pretty cool. Now, of course, if you have a monster on the field, you can't get any more monsters on the field, but that's all right. This just means we'll always have a monster on the field, and if it's a big monster like Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon, that can be very intimidating. We definitely want to set this up because this is what keeps our board established, gives us the attack power to close out our game before an opponent can draw the outs to our floodgates and other stun cards that are stopping them from winning. Next up, taking a look at the win cons here, we are playing 3 copies of Skill Drain. This deck works great for Skill Drain. Ancient Gear Reactor has, an effect that can be used. The only thing we're really missing out on is a Wyvern Search, which if we get Wyvern turn 1 and get to play it before Skill Drain, nice, it's already done. We don't really need more than 1 Wyvern Search. And Skill Drain just outright wins the game. We pay 1,000 life points to negate all monster effects on the field. Decks are built on monster effects on the field, so if we turn those off, it just becomes a battle of the big bodies, and Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon, especially with 3,200 attack, is hard for most decks to deal with. So this card right here will just outright win us most games. And if that doesn't do it, we're also playing 3 copies of Summon Limit. Summon Limit is a very powerful continuous trap card that just says neither player can summon more than twice per turn. This is nice, hurts combo decks quite a bit, and if combo decks can't go off, they really can't get to their cards that are going to out our board, and they're not going to be able to summon any monsters really that can likely handle the Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon constantly reborning itself. And that makes Summon Limit very powerful, especially because in this deck we're playing board wipes like Torrential Tribute, and that just means if our opponent summons 2 monsters, we Torrential Tribute the board, chain Summon Limit, then they've summoned 2 monsters, their board's open for us to attack directly, and we can get a lot of damage in on 1 turn. So Summon Limit, very good. That and Skill Drain definitely carry this deck. Next up, to keep those cards protected, I am playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. When we have our floodgates set up, they're winning us the game, and we don't want to lose those floodgates, so we have 3 Solemn Judgment. If our opponent draws the out, we can flip Solemn and negate it. It negates any summon or spell or trap card that would be activated by paying half our life points, which is no big deal. Happy to have that. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of Waking the Dragon. Waking the Dragon is a pretty cool card to have in the back row here. It just means that if this set card on the field and its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card and is now in the graveyard or banished, we can special summon a monster from our deck or extra deck. So that's pretty sweet. We can pull out a lot of good extra deck cards, and we're not really using our extra deck for anything else, so we're just going to load it with good Waking the Dragon targets, things like Ultimate Falcon, Final Sigma, Last Warrior from Another Planet, Naturia Exterio, and Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon. Those are usually my go-to choices. Just load the extra deck with 3 copies of them. You can use Blackwing Full Armor Master too, pretty good. Just a good card to have, so that way we can punish our opponent's Harpy's Feather Dusters, Lightning Storms, etc. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute, really good in this deck. When a monster is summoned, you can destroy all monsters on the field. So that's pretty cool. You play it on your opponent's turn to disrupt their plays. We don't mind if we're wiping our board because we have Ancient Gear Reborn, which at the end of the turn can just special summon us an Ancient Gear guy right back so that we can poke our opponent's life points down. And this card works super well with Summon Limit because if we play Torrential and then play Summon Limit, our opponent's got to pass on an open board, and we can easily take out at least half their life points in one turn with this deck when they do that. So pretty cool. Definitely using it. And for the last 2 cards, I am playing 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. This is mostly just a pick for my duel group. We have lots of decks that play a lot more trap cards and back row decks because this is a casual deck, played in a casual setting. So you see a lot more decks like those. And as a result, I don't want to lose to problematic spell and trap cards, so having Heavy Storm Duster is nice because I can just set it, and then I can flip it on my opponent's turn, destroy 2 spells or traps, and I don't even have to worry about losing my battle phase because it's on my opponent's turn. So it just answers a lot of annoying decks. If you're not facing spell or trap card based decks, you can definitely swap this card out for some other form of removal or disruption, maybe more floodgates because they help you win the game, whatever you're looking for. And that is it for the main deck. Going into our extra deck real quick, I am playing 3 copies of Last Warrior from Another Planet. This extra deck is all targets that can be summoned off of Waking the Dragon. Last Warrior from Another Planet is a really nice card because it just says when this card's on the field, neither player can summon monsters. So if their opponent's board is open when they hit us with the Lightning Storm or the Harpy's Feather Duster, we can summon Last Warrior, and then all they can do is set monsters, and we can whittle away. So just a nice option to have. Next up, we are playing 3 copies of Naturia Exterio. Exterio is a good monster to pull out in certain matchups that are very spell and trap dependent because this card can negate spells and traps on either player's turn and not even once per turn. All you have to do is have a card in the graveyard to banish and then send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. So as long as you have that set up, you can keep banishing spells and traps infinitely. So if a matchup is very dependent on their spells and traps resolving, they are not going to like to see that card. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon is a nice boss monster to have. It's a 3,500 attack monster that's unaffected by other card effects. That makes it really hard to deal with. You're either going to have to kaiju over it or find a way to beat it by battle. And there are just certain decks and matchups that are not going to be able to deal with that monster, and that makes Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon a good target to go into. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This monster has 4,500 attack. Now it can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects, which is not as good as being unaffected, but still pretty good. And 4,500 attack, an extra 1,000 attack is pretty nice to have. Additionally, this card has an effect that we can destroy a card on the field instead of attacking with it this turn, and that can come in handy. Just a good option to fill out the extra deck. And lastly, I am playing 3 copies of Geomathmech Final Sigma. When we special summon this card in the extra monster zone, it's unaffected by card effects except Mathmech cards, which basically makes it a, Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon, but it's got 500 less attack, which isn't so bad, but it does gain the effect that when you do battle damage to your opponent by battle with a monster with this card, that battle damage is doubled. So that's really nice. If they have a weak attack monster on the field and you just want to, rip through it, do a lot of damage. So a good option to have to round out our Waking the Dragon extra deck. So that is it for my Ancient Gear trap control deck. So just a fun little alternative casual way to play a trap control strategy using some different cards, a different flavor, and I very much enjoy just having this kind of variety and very fun way to use some cool Ancient Gear monsters, give appreciation to a cool card like Ancient Gear Reborn, which I just think has great card design. But love to know what you're doing with Ancient Gears. I appreciate you checking out the deck profile. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next one.